Video, we're going to talk about the Dunning-Kruger effect, sensation-seeking, social media, and some statistics of incidents in the Blue Mountains, as well as some other things. Let's start with the Dunning-Kruger effect. The Dunning-Kruger effect basically means that ignorance is bliss. So the less aware you are of your difficulties, the more confident you are, or the less aware you are of your abilities, that is. And this has a lot of implications for bushwalkers. A lot of incidents are caused by people overestimating their abilities. And if people are not aware of the risks, they are more likely to overestimate their abilities and need to be rescued. We can help with the knowledge if we can't help with the skills. And this is where it's irritating that people like national parks and the tourist office won't sell my book. A good example of ignorance and overconfidence, as it probably wasn't mental health because the police charged him, is the 2012 Christmas expedition by a Victorian man who was going to walk from Nunes to the other side of the Wollamai National Park, about 150 kilometres, something that would normally take about a week and possibly need some specialist equipment. So he told a friend to meet him 3 days later, and he didn't turn up. So after 7 hours of searching by the police, SES and VRA, they found him because he lit a smoky fire. He'd been slightly injured. And in his backpack, they found just some potatoes and naan bread. He didn't even have a tent. There are also two examples of people who had to be rescued twice. The first one was on the Australia Day long weekend in 2011, when a couple borrowed a beacon from Windsor Police Station and they didn't report back, so a search was started for them and the car was found near Pierce's Pass. And the next thing, the beacon went off and the police found them in Yaleen Canyon, which is nearby. The strange thing is that a couple of days later, the same thing happened. The beacon went off and they were in Yaleen Canyon again. The second example is a young man who had to be rescued from the Megalon Valley but left his equipment behind. So he went back to get it and he had to be rescued again. It should be stressed that the majority of incidents are not caused by people doing something stupid. However, there is a small number of people for whom they have to take extreme risks, and that's because they have a deficiency in one of their genes, and that's what's known as sensation seeking. And sensation seeking is the tendency to enjoy varied, novel, and intense experiences in order to get a dopamine hit. And these people have a polymorphism or a variation in the dopamine receptor gene, which can affect how efficiently the receptor binds to dopamine, leading to a need for more dopamine to achieve the same level of pleasure. So these people are likely to want to go back and do the same things over and over again, such as jumping off cliffs. Some of those people will be the same people who on social media say that safety barriers are just a nuisance and you should always climb over them. But I found in a quick poll of a Facebook group, which is not a very scientific method, I'll admit, but it was a very large Facebook group, that there were actually a very small number of that, a very tiny proportion that would actually say that publicly, that they deliberately did that sort of thing. It is therefore wrong to say things like you can't fix stupid, because if you inform people about the risks, then they will take them into account and will change their behaviour. It also explains the success of the preventative search and rescue groups that have been tried in the Grand Canyon and Yosemite National Parks in the USA. These are volunteers or park rangers who meet people on the track, usually at the track head, and discuss with them what their adventure is going to be and what their preparations are. And they found that this has reduced the number of incidents. If you look at the track page, it says that every year 130 bushwalkers get lost or need rescuing in the Blue Mountains. But that's a statistic that has not been updated for many years. I did another Freedom of Information request this year, and I was able to find that, in fact, in this past year, it was 188 operations that were performed, of which 53 were for missing persons, those are lost bushwalkers. And the figure of 188 could be, anything from one person to, say, 10 people. So it could be that easily 200 or even 400 people are being rescued every year at the moment. My research shows that most of the incidents happen where people go the most, and that means that they happen on tracks close to places like Katoomba, where you think that people will be quite safe. However, the most deadly places are the more remote locations, such as the Canangra Boyd National Park seems to be the most dangerous, and canyoning was the most deadly activity because there's so many ways to die. My research also shows that the number of incidents increases by about 10% each year, and that the number of incidents being reported reduces each year. And that latter statistic is quite concerning because, again, it makes people think that they're safe and they go for confidence and more likely to engage in activities for which they are not capable. When I say the number of incidents reported, I just mean the number that the public is likely to hear about on social media or on the internet or on the news. The reasons for becoming involved in an incident can be extremely varied. A case in point is the 1955 case of Barry McMiles, a car thief who escaped from Bathurst jail because he wanted to get back to his home in Bankstown. And that meant he had to walk there, and he walked through the Blue Mountains. So 3 days after leaving Bathurst, he walked there amazingly. He walked into a campsite on the Mount Solitary and asked the people there for directions to the railway station, which of course is, 6 kilometres or even more, many kilometres away from that position. Um, and then he disappeared into the dark again. And the police were quite concerned because he hadn't had anything to eat or drink up to that stage, and they thought he might die of starvation and exposure. So there was a big search for him, and he was found shortly afterwards, that is 5 days after leaving the prison. He was walking along the road next to the Cox's River in the Burragarang Valley because at this time the dam had not been built. And the policeman came across him and arrested him. And that was the end of his expedition. These days, of course, it's social media that has one of the major influences, leading to droves of people going to Lincoln's Rock and to the so-called infinity pools at Lura and at Fortress Ridge. At Fortress Ridge, Bushwalking Wilderness Rescue had to station some volunteers to meet people there, to talk to them about their ability to do that walk because it was actually a canyon. But that didn't stop people from going there. Well, I'm nearly out of time, but I should like to make a few more points. Number one is that the reason we don't have more fatalities and injuries is the marvellous work done by our professional rescue staff and our amazing volunteers. But this does mean that for a single person to be rescued, there can be many, many people involved. And the largest single search so far involved 1,500 people. I shall conclude by saying that the number of incidents continues to increase, and therefore the TREC program is not enough. There needs to be something else done, and most of the incidents that do happen, maybe 70%, could have been prevented.